Welcome back, everyone. At the risk of being repetitive, it's being described as the worst week so far for President Trump and his presidency. His former campaign chair, Paul Manafort, was found guilty on 8 counts of tax crimes. His former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, pled guilty to 8 federal charges, including campaign finance violations, claiming in open court the president directed him to illegally pay off a porn star. And now the longtime chief financial officer of the Trump Organization is being granted immunity from prosecution. And as we all know, it's never good when the bookkeeper flips. Joining us for more, our political correspondent for the Tampa Bay Times, William March, Manatee Democratic Chairwoman Cheryl Wilson, and Frank Patty of the Sarasota Republican Party. And we're going to get to the president and his week in one second, but I want to start with the governor's race, because we have one barnstorm of a Democratic and Republican primary. And Wendy, let me start with you, because I can't make sense of the polls. Some polls, including one that Mayor Gillum is showing off, has him in the lead. Other polls have Gwen Graham up by 9 points. Others have Phil Levine back a point. What are we to make of this?
Well, when I see stuff like this, Alan, what I do is I look at the rolling averages. Real Clear Politics, for example, gives you an average of polls. That's really a little bit better indication than any one. In the Republican race, we had a couple of what could be, in my opinion, are outlier polls.
Meaning what?
Meaning that they show very different results from others done before and after them. Now, there haven't been many done since those two, so we can't say for certain, but they look a whole lot like outliers.
So let's talk about what that means, because since President Trump was in Tampa a few weeks ago, Ron DeSantis bolted out to a pretty considerable lead.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then at some point in the last couple of days, you had other polls showing that Adam Putnam was within 1 or 2 points.
And those are the two that I am calling, thinking they probably are going to turn out to be outliers. One was done by Florida Atlantic University. It had a very, very small sample. The other done by Survey USA. And they showed Putnam and DeSantis neck and neck. Since then, another one has gone back to the way the polls were looking previously, with DeSantis with a double-digit lead. The upshot is the polling average shows DeSantis up about 7 points.
Frank, let me get your reaction to this, because the president's endorsement of Ron DeSantis really moved the base. But you and I both know that a lot of folks in the Republican hierarchy are really for Adam Putnam because he's been around so much longer. Have you gotten any kind of sense of where the momentum is in the days and weeks since the president was here?
I would say the momentum had started out towards DeSantis. I think it's been moving back to Putnam, and that's why it's going to be so tight. Putnam's beginning out more with the grassroots. He's here more in Florida. He's going to the clubs. He's holding breakfast and luncheons and so on to get them out. Now, you may say at each of these things there's only maybe 100 people or so. They get out the vote. These are the people on the phone. These are the people who knock on doors. These are the people who go out with signs and everything else. So he's getting the grassroots, and I think that may be moving him.
Sure. What about on the Democratic side? As I indicated, the polls there are all over the place here. We had Mayor Gillum in our area on the Sun Coast. I know he paid you a visit today. He paid us a visit. And the polls do have him surging. And he's getting a considerable infusion of money from Tom Steyer and George Soros. So he's going to be getting on the air in markets around Florida, which he has until now not been able to afford to advertise. Do you feel anything in your community in terms of which way this race is going?
Adam, or Mayor Gillum is on a really good trajectory right now. He's getting some very good results. I also have observed that in our area, he is probably the most organized campaign that we have seen as far as visits and seeing work. I've noticed that he has teams out at all of the early voting sites, and they're very, as Frank says, very organized and very together. I have learned, though, you know, Wendy's talking about guys that do this for a living. And what I have taken from that is they're wrong as many times as they are right. And what I tell people is don't make your predictions. Let's again, I'll go back to what Frank said. The boots on the ground over this last weekend is probably going to make an impact.
Wendy, if Mayor Gillum is surging right now, is it too little, too late?
It's not as much as he would like to have, and it's pretty late. He's got a weekend, he's got the last weekend to make up what looks like probably double digits. Gwen Graham has been showing pretty consistently at mid-20s or mid to upper 20s, and the surge that's been detected for Gillum shows him moving up from about 10 to about 15. He's still got pretty far to go. 650 grand is a nice chunk of money, but it's not enough for a saturation ad buy statewide, even for a weekend.
Okay, let's talk about President Trump's really bad, not really good, terrible, awful week. Frank, you saw what happened in court this week with Manafort and Cohen. Today, as I made reference to, the president's chief financial officer of the Trump organization was given immunity from prosecution. I know that many Republicans like what the president has done in terms of policy, but how do you look at everything that's going on right now in terms of the distraction to the country and the questions about what he did, not only when it comes to the Russia investigation, but to everything else?
The Russian investigations brought up nothing, okay?
Well, you don't know that, because you don't know what
they would have had more than this out.
Well, hold on. Let me hold on 1 second. Because as somebody who has covered the courts for a great many years, prosecutors don't update the public in terms of what they have on evidence until they go to the trial or make an indictment. So let's leave that there.
Okay. First of all, Manafort, take him to the side because it means nothing to the campaign. Okay, it was, whether you want to say it was a bad pick or whatever, fine. Has nothing to do with the campaign. Cohen, if I was a lawyer, I'd destroy him in court. If he had anything to say, the man's lied once, he's going to lie twice. There's nothing he's saying. It could be impeachment or anything else. Okay, when the president was elected, we knew he was not a Boy Scout. He's gone a little further than that too. He's going the same route that Clinton did.
So at what point does this bother good, loyal Republicans?
It would bother him if the economy was hitting it. Okay, if the economy was going down. If we had no chances on anything else, but even with the tariffs that he's talking about, the EU's been moving back on that. Mexico moved back on that. He may just win this. Now, you know that I've always been a free market person. However, this gamble may just come off, and that's what everyone's waiting to see.
Wendy, is that what everybody's waiting to see?
Well, it's part of what people are waiting to see, and it will make some difference. You had to laugh when you heard Trump say in the Fox and Friends interview, if you impeach me, the market will crash and everyone will be poor. I mean, this is a mob kneecapper looking at us and saying, nice economy you got there, be ashamed if something happened to it. That's probably the thing that he can most cling to as things get bad and worse. And they do seem to be getting a bit worse. It starts to look this week a little bit like a circle closing in around him.
Go ahead.
It's a consensus, I think, that he did have a not very good, pretty bad week. And yet he doesn't seem to acknowledge that. It hasn't sunk in with the president. And, you know, I'm a fan of a progressive economy. I want to see the economy make a lot of progress. I want to see my investments do well. But I think this is getting to be an old refrain. You know, what is our price? Are we willing to sell out our history and our future to have a couple of good months in a 401k? You know, everybody's got their price. That's not going to be ours.
Only a few seconds left. I got to ask you this question.
Sure.
The president was asked this week by Fox and Friends to give himself a grade. Mm-hmm. What grade would you give him so far?
At this point, depend. You can't give one. Okay, for the economy, I would
no,
say
just all together.
Altogether, right now the way it's standing, maybe a B.
Can I give him an F?
Okay. Well, he's giving himself an A+.
Well, would you expect less? Any politician's going to do that? Come on.
We are just getting warmed up. Our conversation on the Week in Washington will continue after a break. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing the week in Washington, and joining us is for the political correspondent of the Tampa Bay Times, William March, the Manatee Democratic Chair, Cheryl Wilson, and Frank Patty of the Sarasota Republican Party. Another storyline from this week is the president's ongoing dissatisfaction with his own Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, leading to some speculation, including Lindsey Graham saying that he would not be surprised if the Attorney General would be fired after the midterm elections. Frank, number one, should the Attorney General be fired?
I think he should be. I don't think they get along. He has to have an Attorney General that he trusts, he believes in, and the confidence between the two of them is shot.
Let me ask you this question. Up until now, the Senate has told the president we are in no mood to try to replace him. But what would happen to the Mueller investigation if you get an Attorney General who is not recused, who is in a position to tell Mueller what he can do and what he can't do?
What will happen is he won't get approved. That's the first step. He won't get approved. That would not be a good scenario. But I don't like the setup that was left there after Obama left and the people in charge. They should have been gone day one.
Cheryl, are you concerned what could happen if Jeff Sessions is somehow fired and replaced?
Well, again, I'm going to agree with Frank. I don't think that the United States Senate would approve a nominee that President Trump made under those conditions. But what I also can't get away from is the fact that, or the implication that President Trump appointed Jeff Sessions because he thought he would be with him on the Russia investigation. He was a big supporter, one of his first supporters. So he was appointed to protect Donald Trump, not to do the duties of the Attorney General of the United States.
Wendy, do you get any sense that folks around here are changing their opinions in terms of how seriously that they take the Russian investigation? I did notice new polls out this week that in the last couple of weeks, Mueller's approval rating has gone up by something like 10 points.
It's really very difficult for me to say on that. Republicans, congressional Republicans, went into hiding this week when I heard a PBS radio panel show where they said they asked 42 congressional Republicans to be on the show to talk about it, and none of them would. Republicans will come out on this on the day that they believe that siding against Trump will help them get reelected as opposed to hurting them in reelection. You'll see a sea change. As of now, it's very difficult for me to see which way the Trump base is going, is reacting.
We have to take a quick break. Our final thoughts are just in a moment, but right now let's get a final check on our first alert weather from Chief Meteorologist Bob Harrigan. Bob. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And I want to talk for a moment about Senator John McCain. News today that he is stopping his treatments for brain cancer. And Frank, I know that he is a hero of yours. But at the same time, I've talked to so many Republicans around here who, despite his service to the country, do not like him is a mild way to put it.
Yeah. Well, because of some of the things he said. John McCain is a genuine American hero.
Not according to the president.
Well, according to the United States and the armed forces, he's a genuine hero. Politics aside, from what he said or did, he did great. You know, in Nam, in the prison camp, as I told you, I had dinner with the man who was next door, and he said they beat the daylights out of him. And as he passed by the cells, he said he'd raise one hand and give a thumbs up, and then they beat the daylights out of him again, and he would pass by again, and he still managed to give the thumbs up. And he wouldn't leave until his men left.
Cheryl,
sorry, that's important.
I would imagine there was not a lot in terms of policy you agreed with him on, but what do you think about his service to the country?
I have nothing but respect for John McCain. I think you have to respect his service, his valor, his courage, his resilience, his character. I appreciate that he defended Barack Obama. I appreciate that he has called out Donald Trump. I think he has called it as he believes it through his entire life in some circumstances that most of us can't imagine.
Wendy, is it odd to you that in his final years, John McCain became a controversial figure in the Republican Party?
Well, yes, it's very odd, and it's because, I mean, I think McCain had reached a point that that some politicians eventually get to, where he cared more about what he thought than he cared about getting reelected or about his personal popularity. He said what he thought about Trump, and that's not something that Trump can accept.
Okay. I want to thank you all for being here tonight.